Happy Saturday night, friends, and welcome back to John's Comics with Friends. But tonight's not a comics night. As I kind of like to do on Saturday nights, it's a fun night to talk about other things. And most often film, it was my, I don't want to say first love, but certainly one of the earliest loves for me. And I like to spend some time with a ton of different members in our community talking about cinema and film. And in particular, one gentleman who has joined me a few different times to talk about cinema in so many different ways. And we text each other and kind of go back and forth and talk about, different filmmakers we love and different, films that we care about. And we hit on an idea to talk about two films in particular from director Sidney Lumet, a really, really talented filmmaker with a storied, phenomenal career. And we plucked out two films, and both happen to be centered in and around the courtroom. And we will kind of use those as a springboard, probably to go into a million different directions, as we like to do. But let me bring our guest in, the one, the only, the Gore Vidal.
Evening, John. Thank you for having me, and good evening, everyone that's here. Thank you very much. No, it was actually more of John's idea, and John has, good taste in movies, I think, and we have a lot of overlap in movies that we like, and so I'm very much looking forward to this. It's talking movies with John. I mean, with you, John. It really is a pleasure, and it really is always very enlightening to me, and it's engaging. It's good, and thank you very much for having me.
No, I feel the same way. I feel like coming away from these conversations, a joy of cinema gets reignited, and I think there's a fun, deeper understanding that occurs to the films that we discussed. And we had recently done, or not recently, I mean it's been a few months, but we had done the Before trilogy.
That was wonderful.
And had a great conversation about those fantastic movies.
Absolutely.
So yeah, tonight I am obviously a big fan of Sidney Lumet, but specifically 12 Angry Men holds a high place of appreciation for me. It's a movie that I've seen. I was telling you before we went live that I even have seen the remake, which I want to say occurred in the late 90s somewhere. For Showtime did a remake using George C. Scott, and Jack Lemmon played the Fonda part, and the cast was, they both played off of each other well, but the cast was pretty impressive. Every single person brought something to the part. William Peterson played one of the roles, and I'm trying to remember all the different actors, but Edward James Olmos played one of the roles, and Hume, what's his name, from Coon, but lots of great actors have played these parts because it is a play and has been produced in different iterations. In fact, I remember my high school even doing it when I was in junior high. They did, but it was 12 Angry Jurors so that they could cast some women in the parts.
You did this film. I mean, you did this play in junior high.
My high school did it, but the junior high English teacher was also doing the production down there, and so he invited a lot of his English students to go down and see it.
That's nice. Yeah, you went to public school, private school, John? Do you mind if I ask?
It was a public school, and the gentleman who ran the theater department was, and I think still to this day, one of the most highly paid high school teachers in the state, because his theater productions brought in an inordinate amount of money in this tiny little art town, Laguna Beach, where I grew up. And he would put on productions of The Crucible and do them outside at night on the football field. And I did Mame and Bye Bye Birdie with him. And, but I remember seeing The Crucible, and I remember seeing 12 Angry Men and just being blown away that I knew these kids, but they didn't seem like kids on the stage. They really became these adult characters. And
did you know the play beforehand? You had seen the film, John?
I want to say, I was very fortunate to have a father who
I remember
loved movies. And so I want to say I saw the film before the play. But I don't distinctly remember it until seeing it as a teenager. I saw the play, or the film again, and was it left a bigger impact. And then as I got older and saw, Jack Lemmon play the Henry Fonda part, I'm going to forget which number juror they each are, but
I think it's number 8. I know that's one of the few that I do know is number 8.
number 8.
Because
Okay.
it's like the infinity symbol. And that's
Oh,
that's how I remember it. Yeah.
But what about you? What do you recall the first time you saw the film and the impact it might have had on you?
No, I don't remember when I saw it. I know I was younger. I think when we've done these programs before, is that when I was a kid, I could watch. Unfortunately, it's a negative thing. Unlimited amounts of television.
Okay.
And I could watch whatever I wanted as long as I had things done. I was a good student. I mean, there was no issues. And our television was in the living room. So I want people to think that I had a TV in my room. No, there was no way that was going to happen. Our generation, that's not going to happen. And so in any event, I could watch whatever I want. And it's on the weekends when I wasn't running outside, basically, having the life of the Bad News Bears, because that was our childhood back then.
Right.
And it was a lot of mischief. A lot of mischief. Is I would watch whatever was on TV. So that was I do remember seeing it when I was very young, and I don't think I appreciated it, obviously, for many reasons. I guess it's very adult material. It's just talking. Takes place in one room, and but nevertheless, I watched a lot of these old movies. But then over the years, I would rewatch it. And maybe it was in the late 90s when I saw it again.
Okay.
And I was already an adult. And I really found it very engaging. And basically, what makes me want to watch a movie like this is Henry Fonda. I mean, the Sidney Lumet, the name, maybe it resonated somewhat, but it was the present. One thing we all knew from our generation and yours too, and sorry, your father's, is the importance of Henry Fonda in American films.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's so wonderfully I don't want to say understated, but he's so like easy. His performance is so natural in this. I find myself just captivated by you can see him thinking. He captures the thought process that this character has clearly been stewing in his concerns and his thoughts and his ideas all through this case, and now he's trying to figure out a way to see if anybody else could possibly agree with him, and it's an interesting performance that he gives. So this is Sidney's first film, which is stunning to me, just mind-blowing to me that he could be this effective, and he often returns to the topic of justice and even some of I love one of his later films, Night Falls on Manhattan, with Andy Garcia, but he seems to be in these two films, but specifically in 12 Angry Men, examining a system that doesn't seem to be working right, yet despite all odds succeeds. Right? It's like, because I've heard my brother's a lawyer, and I've heard a lot of people talk about this film as like playing fast and loose with what they're supposed to be doing in the jury room, right? They're definitely not following the instructions of their job. Instead, justice is found anyway, despite the system that they're working within. Did you? I guess the question is, when you got older and you maybe were on a jury or you were in juries, did you feel like the film held any different experience for you after that experience? Did it create any more realism for you?
No, one, I've never been on a jury, and I've never been either when I've been called, I've been dismissed, but I don't get, even though I've been voting since I was 18, and here that's how it works. When you vote, that's how you get called to a jury. I've never been on a jury, but I've been around. When I was younger, I was around lawyers a lot, especially in my education. I was a government major, and I took classes where predominantly lawyers were in, and many of my friends are lawyers. And you're right about this film, and also the verdict. Although the verdict is a little bit more problematic for lawyers, because of the stuff that happens in there. We'll address that when we get to it.
Sure.
And but if you can look beyond that, beyond that, and what these films are, it's more about the human condition and about us. It's certainly 12 Angry Men is a reflection of us, of humanity, and so, or also, and to be more specific, of the United States in the mid 20th century. And because one thing about the film, people who have seen it, is the jurors have very distinct voices, but not only that, very distinct accents. And also, this is post World War II. Some of the people here, if we go by, are probably veterans from the war. Everyone's been affected by the war in some way or the other. Either was probably in the war and such. And the film takes place. The play was 1954, I think, when it aired on television by Reginald Rose, I think. Reginald Rose, the screenplay writer. Price, Rose or Price.
Rose, you're correct.
Rose.
Yeah.
And so what this does is a reflection of us, and the idea of someone basically what the case is that a young man, an 18-year-old boy, is accused of murdering his father. And if he is found guilty, he will be sent to the electric chair. The death penalty is legal in New York at the time. I think nationwide, the states want it.
Right.
In any event, the jury, they adjourn, they go in and they start to deliberate, and they take a vote, and basically it's 11-1. And one person says at this point he's not sure, he has a doubt, a reasonable doubt. He's got a doubt, and that's Henry Fonda. But I'm getting ahead of myself. But basically, the film still holds up extremely well.
Yeah. And
it does not. One thing I don't like to use, I don't like to think when people think something is dated. I just don't. That doesn't resonate with me.
Sure.
Even when I was younger, I could always put myself, okay, this was made 30 years before this, 40 years, whatever. And it doesn't bother me. But this movie, in that sense, it resonates so powerfully. I know lawyers use this. It's used for sociological studies.
Sure.
And you're right. They've done all kinds of versions of this in other countries as well, Even done one with women in it, and 12 Angry Women I've seen. And so it just resonates because each one of those characters who don't have a name.
No, just numbers. Who
don't just have numbers, but the script, the directing, and oh my goodness, the actors that were chosen for this, not just with Fonda, but with Bagley Jr., Klugman, Cobb. It's just E.G. Marshall. The one, he's also on The Verdict. I was going to say it's Carl Malden, but it's not Carl Malden.
Jack Warden.
That adds a lot to
it. For sure.
So yes. So no, the movie is perfectly fine. There's no issues with it that I find. And even like you said about your brother and other lawyers, all the shenanigans that maybe take place there is they're not shenanigans, but it's like that's not the point of this movie.
No.
It's not the point.
No, I think what I've long felt and probably enjoyed about Sidney Lumet is that his films are more about examining the impact that a flawed system has on a human, right? And in this case, you have these 12 men in the room, but also, by extension, this boy out on trial, right? And they're all sort of victims of a system that has flaws, and they're trying to work around it in much the same way. I think a lot of his films, Dog Day Afternoon obviously jumps to mind, but a lot of his films have that at the core. Network, right? These people working within a system that is flawed, and they're trying to I don't want to say find their humanity, but certainly find their place maybe in that system. And I think the reason why I think this continues to be a film that stands the test of time is that it's incredibly relatable. We've all had some connection to a courtroom, right? Maybe not anywhere near as dramatic, hopefully, as these 12 gentlemen, but I think we can all understand it, and we can put ourselves in the shoes of both maybe a juror, but also the young man on trial, and think like,
Yeah.
what do I want
Yeah.
in that room? What do I want to be happening in that room were I to be in such a horrible circumstance?
The interesting when I guess some of the jurors, which I just find again, remarkable script, and thinking the directing by Lumet, and not just those actors, is for example, Cobb's character, Lee J. Cobb. He's the one who thinks the kid is guilty, but he's the one who's estranged from his son.
Yeah.
When I watched that performance, and I watched that, is the reason he is so sure this kid did it, in addition to the kid's background, possibly his ethnicity, is this boy is accused of murdering his father. And Cobb early on talks about how he doesn't use the word he's estranged from his son, but he talks about when my kid was 9 years old, he ran away from a fight. It was humiliating.
Yeah.
And I was going to teach him a lesson. He's never going to do that again. And then when he was 16, he hit me. He was much bigger than I am. But you can tell he's broken up by this because his son hasn't spoken to him. He's angry at the son. So in a way, as I watch this, just his character alone is, in a way, that's almost like a metaphor for this, in the sense that his son, in a way, has cut him out from his life, has, in a way, killed him. And this boy here has literally killed his own father. And he's absolutely sure. And he's angry. Yep. So he's transferring his own into, this is why this kid is guilty.
He's got to burn.
He's got to burn.
Right.
And because he at one point, him and Fonda, they have this confrontation. And Fonda says, "You're a sadist. I bet you want to press the button to electrocute him." And he goes, "Yes."
Yeah.
I would.
He's slipping through our fingers. Yeah.
Yes, he's slipping through our fingers. He goes, "What are you, the executioner?"
I'm one of them.
I'm one, but it builds up this way. And then by the end of the film, by the end, when he decides the kid is not guilty, and everyone, and now he's had this confrontation, not just with Fonda, but particularly with Fonda's character, number 8, who's, I guess, the voice of reason throughout this, is everyone leaves, but Fonda remains behind. And Fonda, I remember, gets the coat, because he's there, he's been broken up. Because towards the end of that, Cobb has this breakdown where he takes his kid's picture and tears it to pieces. And then he goes, "Not guilty," and he breaks down and sobs. Now, for this alpha male macho man to do this in front of his peers,
right?
This is not, you don't do that. And so, and Fonda, about his character, he's the epitome of our humanity, which some of these men have, but they're intimidated by the others to express it, and they have other reasons. Yeah. Or some of them, like Warden's character, he could care less. He's interfering with his game. He has to go to a game.
He wants to get to that baseball game.
Guilty or not guilty, let's just get out of here. Complete indifference, almost like it's complete indifference. Anyway, so Fonda comes back and just puts the coat on him. And they
it's such a compassionate moment.
Bingo. It's and that's just his character. And then we have Begley's character with his rant, which is a wonderful scene. And you want to talk about that, John. Ed Begley, is that Ed Begley Jr.'s father?
Yes.
Okay. So his character is interesting as well.
I mean, I think, each one of, like, to your point, each one of them is coming in with baggage, right? Each one of them is bringing something into this jury room, and I think that's the very relatable portion, is that we're supposed to be this unbiased jury of your peers, but the point of the movie is like, it's impossible, right? We're all carrying in, prejudice and preconceived notions and personal baggage, and I think and again, to your point, that screenplay does such a phenomenal job of giving every one of them these true moments to just shine through and give you hints and glimpses of who these people were 20 minutes before they showed into the jury room, or who they're going to be when they get home that night. And I think that resonates so strong for me, at least. Every time I watch it, it rings just as true. To your point, like, outside of, you call it a period piece because you can look at the clothes they wear and see that it's black and white, fine, but it's still true to the moment, right?
And yes, back to the Bagley. Bagley's the one who, he thinks the kid is guilty because he's clearly racist. He's the one who used the word them.
Yeah.
They basically, yes, we only see the kid at the beginning.
Yes.
The camera pans over him. He's got these really big eyes, and he's looking at the jurors, and he's got this sense of helplessness.
Mm-hmm.
He's just looking at him. You could tell they're gonna send me to the chair.
Yeah, all these white faces.
Yeah,
for the most part, right?
Yeah, and so he does. So that's what looks going to happen to him, right? And so Bailey makes it very clear. He used the word them, they, and that they are, you can't be trusted. They all drink, they lie, they murder, they do all these things. And initially, some people are put off by it, but most of them aren't. But I think towards the middle, or past the middle of the film, when he goes on a rant, the jurors begin to stand and turn their backs on him.
Right.
And so all of them do in some way. Well, no, maybe a couple of them don't, but even then, all of them at the end, they're not agreeing with his rants.
Right.
As he's going, and he thinks they're deluded. He goes, "You're the ones who don't understand.
Right.
You can't trust these people." And this, of course, this is the 1950s, right? When these people, was another code for these un-American, the communists.
Non-white, yeah.
No, that's also that, but also it's also
communists.
It's definitely, right after the House of Un-American Activities stuff with McCarthy, and so there's also intentional where Reginald Rose is coming from, and where Sidney Lumet is coming from. Sure. Regarding the making of this program. And then you have E.G. Marshall, I think, who's a stockbroker. And E.G. Marshall, the reason the kid is guilty, there's a class issue, not a race issue with him.
Because his is a money perspective. If you watch him, he tries to pretend to be very logical and very mathematical and very almost scientific about his approach to this kid being guilty. But you can see it. He gets broken little by little when he sees the logical, emotional, prejudiced opinions of those on his side, the people that are agreeing with him. He starts noticing maybe I'm not so logical in the way I've decided this case, which is
says they come from
fascinating journey.
They come from the slums.
Yep.
They come from the slums, and that says it all. And at one point, I think it's Jack Klugman's character asks him, "Do you ever sweat?" You remember that? And he goes, "No, I don't sweat."
Something about his glands, right?
Something about his glands. This man does not sweat. So I guess the reason I mention these is because I remember these are the men who intimidate all the others. Because they're the ones who are some of them. Now, Marshall's more subtle, but but the other two, Blakey, the one who's racist, clearly racist, the other one who's got his son issues, they're very aggressive. And you can tell they intimidate all the others. Mm-hmm. But then you have Fonda, who says, I just have some doubts here.
Yeah,
and basically
I'm just not sure.
I'm not sure. And also, he's the one who acknowledges this kid is a lousy lawyer. The lawyer didn't do his job for his client. And the other guys try to dismiss it. Well, the lawyer clearly saw he was guilty. And the point is, that's not the point. Your lawyer is supposed to represent you to the best of his or her abilities. And this one didn't do that at all. So now he takes the role of, in a way, getting into the details. And then when that opens, it opens the door. And I think one of the first moments is with the knife.
Oh my God, such a great moment.
Yeah, you want to discuss the knife song with the John?
Well, I mean, if we're going strictly from a realism
Yeah.
lawyer logic, it's so illegal and so problematic. But cinematically, from a character standpoint, it's so powerful when he, stabs the knife into the table and then he pulls another one out, clicks it, and then drops it onto the table next. It's like, oh my, the silence that hits the room, and there's a few moments involving the knife, like when he acts out like he's going to stab him and all the other men go, oh my God, like, don't actually do this. Like, you're actually going to stab him because you guys are so argumentative.
Yeah, that was Cobb's character, the one who he called a sadist.
Yeah. And I think, it's a great, firstly, it's a power, given that this is a film, like you say, that takes place all in one room with just these 12 performers. Having strong visual cues is important. And that knife, that close up, that moment, that sound of it striking the table is a wonderful reset, right? It's allowing us to get out of the face, over the shoulder, like the camera is able to do something different. And I think it's very jarring for the audience, which is a wonderful thing to, like, we're already emotionally upset, but now to get visually upset, right?
Basically, what happens is that the prosecution early on had said that this was a very special knife. The kid said he lost the knife. He had gone to, basically, the kid's accused of killing his father, and then supposedly he went to the movies. Well, he did go to the movies, and then he had a knife, but he lost it. And so that knife was found on the father. And it's a very distinct knife. The prosecution made this very clear. I think they had, as a witness, they had the person the knife was bought from, and he himself said it was a very distinct knife. It's very,
his friends saw him playing with it or something.
Yeah. And then the reason Fonda has a knife is he went for a walk in the kid's neighborhood, and he went to some random store, and apparently these knives are quite common, which his defense attorney should have done.
Right.
But Fonda now has the knife, and he places it next to the actual knife, and they're like, and that begins to turn. At that point, you begin to have a turn. And then Fonda's character does something interesting. He says, because he knows at this point, he goes, okay, fine. It's a gamble. He says, let's take a vote again. But this time, I'm going to abstain. And basically, but you're going to write in your vote, a silent vote. And if everyone here still says that the kid's guilty, I'll change my vote. But you can tell when he does this, he looks back and he's wondering, what have I done? And then they do the vote again. And the person who changes the vote, at first we don't know, but we have Klugman's character from The Odd Couple, right?
Yep.
Now, he's the one who, at one of the rants, he himself comes from these quote-unquote slums. And he's the one also that may be the ethnic character in this group. Now, to be fair, there's a few that are, but he's the one that maybe is closest to the kid. Because we don't know whether the kid is Puerto Rican or something. I'm not sure, right? It's never said. Never said, no. Right? And so he's the one. So at this point, Cobb, the one who has father-son issues, he just rants at him. It's you who changed your vote. I figured, all this.
I know you guys are all alike. Yeah, you just care about each other, and
And then the old man across the way says it wasn't him. There's an old man. He's like the oldest in the group in the 70s. He goes, I did.
Yep.
And they begin. The one thing about these jurors, some of them early on, this kid's life is in their hands. But some of them are dismissive. This, like, we don't want to be here. Let's just vote. Get out of here. This is disturbing to some of them. It's disturbing to some of them, but not to all of them. Again, this is something about human nature. That's why this again resonates, because it says something very truthful about us, and it's not good at all.
No, and
not at all.
And you mentioned there's race elements, there's class elements, there's age elements with this older character, who some of the jurors feel the need to protect, others feel no respect for and want to just inundate with their accusations. This is the role that in the 97 version is played by Hume Cronin.
Okay.
I think it was one of the last
the
Cocoon,
wasn't he?
Yeah. It was one of his last movies, but he's wonderful. Him and Jack Lemmon together as the two jurors willing to give it a shot. But he says that character, that juror, says something like, it took a lot of courage for him to stand alone. And I felt like he deserves more time, basically, is the idea that this old gentleman is willing to say, like, it was scary and courageous for him to stand up. And I felt like that should be rewarded. And maybe we should spend a little more time talking about this. And I love that perspective. He's not saying he's convinced me. He's not saying I believe that he's innocent. He's just saying, I believe that his concerns maybe warrant a little more discussion.
Yeah.
And it's that reprieve that the juror number 8 needed to be able to continue the discussion further,
And that makes a significant difference. And then he will be important later on because there's two witnesses. Well, there's only one there's two witnesses that supposedly saw him. One, a woman that saw the kid kill his father through the
with
window.
her.
And then there is this a man
with her two little dots, right?
Below the apartment. That's right. And
then the older man below them, right? Yeah.
Below them. And so when someone says, why would that man lie about having seen the kid run down the stairs? I mean, hearing thing, I'm going to kill you, hearing the body fall, getting all that right. And then the old man interjects and says, well, I've noticed that this man, if you notice his coat, there was like a cut through it or some kind of a slit through it. And he was a man like in the 70s. He was a man basically who had been probably ignored all his life. And I noticed also he had trouble with his leg when he walked up there. He needed help when he got to the stand. So here's now a man who's all his life, he's never been important. And now he's important. Mm-hmm. He's a key witness in this trial. A young man who killed his father, and I think, again, I think it's Cobb's character who says, how would you know any of this? And it's very subtle the way it's done is his face just, he just lowers his eyes. But the viewer, we don't have to be, it's not a didactic film. We can tell he's probably talking from experience.
Right.
So.
No, and that's the baggage he's bringing into the jury room, much like anybody else's prejudices or family experiences or financial understanding of class or what have
Absolutely. And then he helps sway the jurors with that. And then he later on, like you said, John, E.G. Marshall's character, the stockbroker's character, when he keeps doing this because he wears glasses and the indentations are there. And that's when the old man says, the woman who supposedly saw this happen, she wore glasses. Well, no, she didn't wear glasses. And they go, she has indentations on it.
Yeah.
So did she have her glasses when she went to bed? The Marshall's character, no one wears their glasses to bed. So then basically all these things is reasonable doubt is finally the idea of it.
Yes.
And at one point when Warden's character seems to dismiss this, I guess the one who's clearly either a naturalized immigrant, American, or first generation, the one with a clear accent. I'm just assuming it's like Eastern Europe, maybe. Right. He's the one who has to remind them, these guys here, about why this country, in our Constitution, in our Bill of Rights, which they may not have in his country, he has to remind them, do you know what reasonable doubt is? And Warden says, oh, you guys come to this country and you're telling us about our life. Sometimes you need an immigrant to do this. And one of the ironies is Alexander Hamilton, helped not write the Bill of Rights, but was helped form a constitution. He was rolling on these Caribbean islands.
He was an immigrant, yeah.
He was basically an immigrant that all these Wall Street people are now benefiting from because it was his financial system is making all these billionaires billionaires. But that's a whole other debate.
Yeah.
And sorry, it's a whole other live stream. And so, and he's also the one, John. I don't remember the quote when the racist guy makes that statement. His English is incorrect, and he corrects him on the English. He goes because the guy sits next to him. He's the one who the guy who's ranting on them and them. He says they doesn't even speak English correct.
Oh yeah, the double negative. Yeah,
double negative, and then the immigrant he says no, they don't speak English correct. So he corrects him. So there's all these moments throughout this, and
completely.
eventually everyone begins to drop. Now, not all of them are convinced. Some of them just want to get out of there, like Warden's character. But it's quite amazing how Fonda held his ground throughout this, which I think was quite brave to do this. But then again, that's hard, John, for us. I mean, it's hard. I mean, this is 1950s when segregation is still legal, right? In many parts of Texas. Where getting married to people in some places is against the law. If you're different races, right? Certainly in Texas it was. Here in Texas. But all the people that were silent about it, and I must say I'm blaming them, not at all. They were in a tough situation. It was the time, but imagine those people, obviously, who were not silent, of different races, who stood up against this. That's what caused the change. But they were in the minority. It's like we had the 4th of July recently. As you know, a third favored revolution. A third favored, no, we're going to stay loyal to England. Another third, we could care less. They were like Jack Warden. We don't care where the wind blows.
I just want to make my money and keep my slaves.
Bingo. Basically, yeah. So, again, just an incredible, film in so many ways,
and again, yeah, it's that examination of Americana at a specific place in time and in a specific system that continues honestly to the other film. If we want to dive into that one a little bit here, was there anything else you wanted to say on 12 Angry Men, or we can certainly dovetail things into one another?
Well, just I guess on the final regarding this is regarding Sidney Lumet. Is that he came from he was from a Jewish. He was Jewish, and I think I've seen interviews with him where he says our family were basically of the left wing group. We're very liberal, and he came from theater. His father had been in theater. He came from theater, and then he started doing acting classes, and so he himself had been in plays, Broadway and off Broadway. But then when television started, late 40s, and you had ABC, CBS, and NBC started to have their own production companies to make, live television, so to speak. He got into directing. And so one thing that he was always aware of was to have some kind of, not that television was going to be used for social change specifically. That's why he did it. But he was very much conscious of that. So whenever he did these productions, this was intentional. And that's why when they brought people like Reginald Price on board, Chayefsky, who did Marty, they all came on board. And then when the blacklist occurred, I was going to say about the blacklist. When the blacklist began, Ken, Sidney Lumet was himself not blacklisted, but he was called, not before the House of Un-American Committee, but at one point the studio said, look, we're getting a lot of backlash with you. What are you going to do? But he had some support within I think it was CBS to do what he wanted. So that allowed him to bring people there who were potentially going to be blacklisted. And so that he was able to get some of these things done. Some
of these teleplays and these films. Right.
And so he was able to get them done because he was now one of the blacklisted directors. And so at one point he was doing 2 series at the same time. One was called Danger and the other one was a historical piece. So he's doing 2 live shows a day. I know that'd be in a week. It was insane.
In a week.
A week was insane. He was in his early 30s, and that's how he did these, you know. And so that generation of people, who came in.
Well, and you emailed me the link to a YouTube video
Oh,
of one of his telefilms.
yeah, Rose
That
wrote
he
that
had.
one. Reginald wrote that one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it was written by the same gentleman who wrote
Yep.
12 Angry
Were
Men,
you able to
directed
see
by
it, John?
Lumet. What's that?
Were you able to see it?
Oh yes. Oh yes, I totally
Oh
saw
my
it.
goodness.
It was powerful. It was intense. And again, about us, in this case, a flawed system of justice in that it's like vigilante justice. This
Yeah.
small ramshackle community experiences. I hesitate to call it trauma, but certainly an uproar, and then seeks its own justice, and they're not in any way looking to actually resolve the fundamental problem. Instead, they're looking to just vent their frustrations out
Yeah.
on something that they perceive to be worthy of their justice. It was powerful. Great acting, like you're saying. Some of the same actors from 12 Angry Men are also in what was I couldn't remember the name of the film, actually.
It's called A Tragedy in a Temporary Town. It's an
Okay.
odd name, Tragedy
And
in
it's
a
on
Temporary
YouTube.
Town.
People can find it.
It's on YouTube.
I might drop the link in the chat here in a little bit when we get into the next one. But it did. I was very grateful that you found it and sent it. It's only like 50 minutes. It's not terribly long.
Yeah.
But it hits a lot of the same notes that we find in, I think, a lot of Sidney Lumet's films, as far as a feeling that goodness exists. It's just it's not the default setting for human
No.
beings, and that they have to be willing to self-examine to get there, and they
Yeah.
have to be willing to then try and convince the lesser angels on other people's shoulders to look the right direction. And it's hard and difficult. And this one starred Lloyd Bridges, Jeff Bridges' dad.
And Jack Warden's also in this film.
Yes. And he is marvelous. Bridges and Warden are both marvelous in it. And it has to do with an assault on a young girl in this small town. And then, a couple of people in the town want to vent their frustrations about the depression on whoever they deem guilty of the crime. And of course, it's going to fall on, in this case, an innocent immigrant boy, rather than the actual culprit. Right. So powerful. Yeah. Really well executed and looked amazing what they could do with a very small budget, because it's all, again, on one sound stage, the way they shot it. It reminded me of another film Lumet did called Failsafe.
Yeah.
Which later, I don't know if you know this, I had seen Failsafe, but I had only ever really.
Failsafe. I'm glad you did. Continue, John. Sorry, continue.
I had only ever seen it because I heard about it when, in the midst of doing ER, George Clooney got the money together to do a live taping of Failsafe.
Right.
He remade it with a couple of his friends and actors from ER and whatnot, and they did it twice. They did an East Coast version and a West Coast version, and they did it live on one giant soundstage where they were moving around and shooting in different places, and it was all happening live, and it was to preserve the intensity of the countdown clock of, like, nuclear war and what could possibly happen. But it reminded me of that. It felt like live TV in a play almost.
I've never seen the Clooney one. I'm aware of it, but I've never seen it. But Failsafe, oh my goodness. In a way, John, the president in that film, Fonda plays the president.
Yeah.
But it's almost very similar to his character in 12 Angry Men.
Okay.
The way I see it.
Okay.
And he wants to look at all the sides, because in Failsafe, you have some American planes due to some glitch, some failure in the computers.
Right.
And the pilots of the bombers are sent a message that we're now at war with the Soviet Union, and they're supposed to drop some nuclear bombs there, and there's no way to retrieve the planes. And so now the president is caught. What do I do? Yeah. He's getting pressured from one side, Walter Matthau's character, who was like Henry Kissinger before Henry Kissinger existed, who says, let's just take advantage of this, do a preemptive strike against the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And then you have Souther saying, well, should we do this? And then you have all these things. He's getting all these pressure points, and he has to think this through.
Yep.
And just like Henry Fonda, his character has to think this through in 12 Angry Men.
Yeah.
It's interesting to watch Fonda's films. Whenever I think of failsafe, I think 3 movies he did almost back to back. But it's almost, if you watch them back, let's say you can watch them as a trilogy. They're not.
Okay.
But one of them is Advise and Consent from, I think, 61, right? That's the one where Henry Fonda wants to get nominated, wants to get when he be appointed as Secretary of State. And there's issues if he's going to get it. Okay, that's one film. Then in the actual Gore Vidal's, The Best Man, he is Secretary of State, but he wants the nomination to be president for his party, Democratic Party, probably. Okay, but be careful what you wish for, because in failsafe,
you have
actually the president, and now you have to decide if planet Earth is going to continue to sustain, to have human life or not.
It's like Russian nesting dolls or something.
yes, it's exactly like Russian nesting dolls.
That's amazing.
But to watch, those, but certainly those movies and back to back, and also with this one, is to watch Fonda's character.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, because I don't think I've seen what was the last one, Best Man. What did you
The Best Man is the best political film I've ever seen. It's better than Bob Roberts. It's better than the Capra films. It's better than Wag the Dog. It's just excellent. It came out in 62, 63, and it's supposed to be a story of the story either of Jack Kennedy and Nixon, or maybe Adlai Stevenson and Kennedy trying to get the nomination for the party. Obviously, Nixon was a Republican, not a Democrat. But here is, what do you want to do to win? It's about winning. What do you want to do to win, to get the nomination? If you have information about your candidate that's going to destroy him, even though it's kind of underhanded, do you use it? And if you don't use it, it's on you.
So I see Best Man and Failsafe were the same year, and then Advise and Consent was 2 years earlier.
Yeah. You watch those back to back, John. It's something. It's something. But The Best Man is, I think, not just because I like the writer at all, but it's the best political film I've ever seen. And how it handles politics, I think, in a very realistic manner. The director of that, John, I think is it Francis Schaffner?
Of which? Advise?
Of the Best Man?
Best Man, let me see.
Was it Francis Schaffner of the film?
It is. Bingo. And written by Gore Vidal, like you said.
Schaffner was the director of the original 12 Angry Men.
Really?
Yes, because it was not directed by Sidney Lumet. The original,
because it was for television, right?
It was for television, and it was Schaffner who directed it.
That's fascinating.
And so, but when the film got optioned, it basically got optioned when. And what's interesting about 12 Angry Men is what I learned is that apparently when Marty came out, written by Chayefsky, and Chayefsky, he wrote Network, right?
I think so.
I didn't know this till recently, was that Marty was the first television original film that was adapted into a Hollywood film. Apparently, TV was new, but Hollywood wasn't paying attention to television.
No, it was a lesser medium.
But apparently, Marty started out as a TV program, not a TV program, but a TV movie or one of these TV plays. It got optioned to be a film, and it was a hit. And that's why the green light was given for
Best Picture winner. Yeah, it was a big hit.
Big with, I think it was with Borgnine.
Borgnine, yep.
And it was Gene Kelly's wife, who was almost blacklisted. She was on she was on the blacklist. She was, but it wasn't. But Gene Kelly told the studios, "You're going to hire her. I'm the guy who does Singing in the Rain. You're going to hire her for this film." And
he had a lot of sway for sure.
He had to use his sway to get his wife because she had been blacklisted. Now, because she wasn't a communist, but you know how it worked back then.
Yeah.
You communist, you right, type of thing.
Yeah.
So
I mean, yeah, Oppenheimer showed us a bunch of insight into that
yeah, he
time
did.
period as well.
So basically, is when the 12 Angry Men, at that point, is that Rose happened to know Fonda, and they became producers. And he convinced Fonda, because he had worked with Sidney Lumet, that he wanted Lumet to direct it. And when Lumet came in, that's where we get many of these actors that we see, because many of those actors were not in the original. Only a few were, and that's where we are. And so
Yeah.
yes, it was his first film, but all this training of live television, where you have to rehearse, and you better get it right on live TV, otherwise forget it. And so
Yeah.
it trained him, and he made this remarkable film. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, and I think he's always seemed to, like, to your point at the beginning, that I think Lumet's always had this tie to theater and to actors in a certain way. And that makes sense, that I think his films would draw actors who appreciate a filmmaker who knows how to work with them and how to craft something with them. And it's, yeah, somebody like Paul Newman in The Verdict, I think, or David Mamet, the writer of Verdict.
Yeah.
I think they would all have this theater troupe mentality about what they were trying to create that would be very different than, say, your typical courtroom drama. When I mentioned Sidney Lumet, you really brought in The Verdict as like a film that you are passionate about.
Yeah.
And I have said before that, at different points in my life, I've gravitated towards different actors. When I was really young, Harrison Ford was it. Like, he was the one. And then when I was, in high school, college age, John Cusack was the one. Like, I really gravitated to John Cusack. Now, as an adult, it's been Paul Newman. I've been going back and finding, films of his that I hadn't seen before, or revisiting films of his. This is the only time that he won the Oscar. Well, here.
Oh, I didn't know
Verdict.
that.
It's an interesting film to win for, considering his incredible.
No, wait, I'm sorry, John. He won the Oscar.
I thought this was the only one he won the Oscar.
No,
for.
I thought the actor from Gandhi won it that year, because that was
that
the year Gandhi swept everything.
Nominated for, let's see,
That was the year Gandhi swept everything.
You're right. He didn't win. So then, what did he win for? Did he ever win?
I don't know, John. I mean, I thought
Including,
maybe he did. Maybe
he was recipient of an Academy Award. So let's find which one he won for.
Not Vote for Perdition. Wasn't for that.
See.
One of his later films. What did he win it for?
Nominated for an Academy Award in 5 different decades. He received an honorary Academy Award.
Like Sidney Lumet. I don't think Sidney Lumet.
So he may not have ever actually won the Oscar.
And I think Lumet was the same as director. I don't think he won anything, John.
Wow.
I think he was also given an honorary award. But it's one of those things, when your movie goes against all these other good movies. And
right.
I remember when Gandhi came out. I didn't see Gandhi until I was an adult. But I do remember Gandhi was everywhere.
Nope. He won for The Color of Money.
That's what it was.
Scorsese's film.
Okay. What was his competition back then?
He was honored with the Oscar the year before he won for A Color of Money.
Now, you like that film. That's one of the few Scorsese films you like. Is that correct?
I do, and it's probably because I love The Hustler.
Oh,
my goodness. It feels like such a perfect sequel. Like, I can't even imagine the conversation that was Paul Newman suggesting to Martin Scorsese that he wanted to make a sequel to The Hustler, and would you help me make it? And then this young punk Tom Cruise is thrown into the woodworks here.
Yeah, how did that happen? I mean, is that how this happened?
I have no idea. I'm assuming that it was something Paul Newman wanted and not something that Scorsese wanted, but I would be fascinated to hear the journey of how that film came to be.
Because when I watched that film, it's like The Age of Innocence.
Yeah. It's literally the first sentence on Wikipedia. It says Paul Newman called Martin Scorsese in September of '84 and asked if he was interested in directing a sequel to The Hustler. They had an original screenplay they sent to Scorsese, written by Daryl Ponikscan.
Well, I don't know why that was Richard Price. I don't know why I thought that.
It incorporated the first 12 minutes of the original film. According to Scorsese, And then Walter Tevis wrote a sequel to his novel called The Color of Money, and he died the same day producer Irving Axelrod received the proofs for the book. So I guess he died, the producer got the proofs, and then they were able to go in and make it. But let's see who gets
Tevis also
credited.
wrote The Man Who Fell to Earth. He wrote
The credited screenplay is Richard Price. You are correct.
Oh, I just thought Richard Price resonated. Okay.
Yep. But the screenplay that signed Scorsese was different, so they must have then gone to the novel that had not been published and then used that. And Richard Price wrote the script.
You know why I like The Hustler beyond Paul Newman? Piper Laurie.
I mean, she's stunning.
Her character in that role. When I first saw The Hustler, and because it's interesting because Jackie Gleason has always been promoted, as it's like when I watched it, I expected to see Gleason in half of the movie,
right?
And but he's not. He's just in a few scenes.
No, it's a small part, yeah.
Small part. But then when Paul meets Piper Laurie, I think it's in a restaurant or a bar, and she's there by herself, and he looks at her, and he goes up to her, and they have, I think, a drink or something. And then when she gets up, she's limping, and she makes it. It's not because I'm an alcoholic. I was born with a bad leg, And then her character, John, absolutely enthralls me. It's a very sad character.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Very, almost in a way pathetic character.
Because it's a very like Greek kind of tragedy, the Hustler, and everybody's doomed to fail. Like nobody has a chance of surviving this journey.
Yes, and you have the predatory George C. Scott, which I didn't expect when I saw it. Who's basically he's prostituting in a way Paul Newman's character.
Oh yes. And
then when he sees Piper Laurie, he thinks that that's what she's doing with him, and he's very open. Then what he does to her, and what leads to what happens to her. Yeah. So when I saw that for the first time, I didn't know anything about her role, and so it was just at something for me. And I'm not saying it's at the heart of the film, but in a way, it does feel like the heart of it for me is her role. It's remarkable.
I think it's the human touch of the film, because the rest of it can feel very masculine, right? It can feel very male, right? It's the feminine touch that gives it this human side, right? That I think is lacking when it's focusing strictly on the gambling and the sport and the
ambition.
Yeah, right.
And the ego. She loves Newman's character.
Yeah,
she loves him. It's sincere love for him. Well, all these other ones have all these other interests, selfish interests. But her, she's in love with him. Which
I think is what is kind of what I like about Scorsese's sequel is it feels so true to that first film, but it shows far more maturity than I think Scorsese often has in his movies, in that it feels like it's from an older Newman's character perspective. The whole film, he's looking at this young punk through his aged eyes, through his experience, and seeing a young woman latching onto him and questioning her ethics and her experience. And yet he knows he needs this kid, but he's also trying to decide, like, can I do better than was done to me? And it's all, and none of it is stated implicitly. To your point about 12 Angry Men, it's all happening inside of Newman, right? And we who have either seen the original film or can read it on Newman's face understand what he's experiencing. And that's brave filmmaking, that they're giving that actor that much space.
I agree. I agree. When Newman, I guess when he did that, when did that come out, John? The late 50s?
The original? Let me go back.
The Hustler, I mean?
The Hustler was 1961.
1961. Okay. I remember with Newman, I think he was Joanne Woodward at the time.
Okay.
He had, I think HUD is on the horizon, I think.
Okay.
I think HUD is on the horizon. Maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong.
I'll have to go into his filmography.
Oh, you don't need to, John, but I don't mind if you do. But
No, I love having the
And then
information. So I love that you're.
he did Horseman Pass, which is Horseman Pass By, based on the
So yeah, Hustler was 61 and HUD was 63.
Okay, yeah, he was on a
And
roll.
then Cool Hand Luke was 67, and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof was 58. So it was Cat, and then it was Hustler, then HUD.
He was on
then
a
Cool
roll.
Hand Luke.
Yeah, he was on a roll.
And as part of this like Paul Newman love affair that I'm in right now, I went and saw HUD for the first time in January. I'd never seen HUD before.
Oh, I didn't know that. What'd you think of HUD? He's not a nice guy in that film.
He's awful.
He's worse in the novel. He's worse.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
It reminded me that of that time, and it may have just been in those, early 60s.
Yeah.
When actors were excited to play awful heroes, like characters who were tragically flawed and getting in their own way, and yet they were the protagonist. They were the main character so you look at, Cool Hand Luke is, for me, is the best example of it, because it seems to be writ large, this idea that this guy is his own problem top to bottom. And it's not simply alcoholism. It's definitely self-destruction at his core. And I know that guys like geez, a lot of actors at this time, what I'm going to try to say, were experimenting in this, right? Brando obviously was the benchmark, right?
Yeah, he was with the Waterfront and Streetcar Named Desire. He does not play nice people at all. Well, no, Streetcar is not very nice. He's more sympathetic on the Waterfront. I'm sorry, John. Continue.
You're right on the money. And I think yeah, I'm trying to think of James Dean is another example of some of this. Movies like Giant, and I think something about Newman at this phase in his career, or maybe at this time in history for actors, was really tapping into that self-destruction concept of character.
Have you seen
Hustlers? And so HUD for me felt like the most intense version of that, because you look at something like The Hustler, and at least it seems like there's a redemption buried in there somewhere. And you look at Cool Hand Luke, and maybe there's a redemption buried in there. But you look at HUD, and you're like, no, this guy's, if we got another 20 minutes of this movie, this guy's dead in a ditch. Yeah. Like, it's like it's only a downward spiral for HUD.
Newman's also starred in another Tennessee Williams play, The Sweet Bird of Youth. And in The Sweet Bird of Youth, Burl Ives is in that film as well. No, I could be wrong. I think Burl Ives is in that film. I know he's in Cat and a Hot Tin Roof. Oh my goodness, that play. Well, the thing is, I just happen to like Tennessee Williams' play, because I think among our playwrights, he's one of the few that many of his plays are tragedies. That's one thing that American playwrights are not generally do. We don't do many. Like Arthur Miller doesn't really do tragedies. I mean, but not in the Greek sense, like Greek tragedies.
Sure.
And in Sweet Bird of Youth, like how Sweet Bird of Youth, Paul Newman plays a guy who, he comes from a small southern town. He's very good looking, and he leaves to make it big in Hollywood. He doesn't. And so but all the time he's been having this relationship with this young girl whose father is like this guy who basically runs the town. And so he'll come back periodically, have his little, one night stand with her, whatever. So when he comes back, this time he comes back with an aging actress who's waiting to get a role to revive her career. And so when he comes back to the town, the town people go, they make fun of him because they say, hey, big shot, you were going to go to Hollywood, make all these films. You're kind of like a stand-in. You're here, you're there. You go, oh, no. And now you've come back with this basically washed-up actress. Oh, she's going to get a big role. I'm going to get a big role. And now he's there to get the girl. And the girl's name, if I'm correct, John, her name is...
I've got it loaded here.
I think the word is Cloud, or the Chastity. She's got an interesting name.
Heavenly Finley.
Bingo, Heavenly.
It's played by Shirley Knight.
So, oh yeah, from the Partridge Family. That's right. So he comes back, and when he comes back with this actress, things are going well. When she meets Heavenly again, John, Heavenly's been ill, and she says, "What happened?" Well, the last time you came, you gave me something.
Uh-oh.
And it's implied what happened was when he came back, he gave her a venereal disease. But the venereal disease caused serious problems with her uterus, which the only way to save her was to remove.
Like a hysterectomy.
Hysterectomy.
Oh, wow.
Which means her sexual desire is gone. And what makes matters even worse for Paul Newman's character is that the father's been waiting for him to come back. And
is this Rip Torn?
Oh, it's Rip Torn. It's not Girl Lives.
Right.
Girl Lives was in
because Ed Begley is in it too.
That's right. And so now what the father wants to do is to get Kim and do basically tragedy in a temporary town kind of justice.
Oh, wow.
But he wants to do to him what he did to his
daughter. Wow.
Tennessee Williams. I'm telling you, that's why he was Tennessee Williams. Controversial.
That's dark.
It's dark stuff. It's dark stuff. And so in any event, well, back to Paul's, Paul's career was almost derailed because he had done a film in the 50s, which was a film set in the Roman times, but it was an absolute bomb. And then when Billy Wilder was going to do Ben-Hur, he offered the role to Paul. Paul turned it down because he says, this other film that I did almost ruined me.
Right.
So he gave it to Charlton Heston.
I'm trying to figure out which one. Is it Silver Chalice? No.
What is it? No, the Ben-Hur I'm talking about.
Oh, I'm trying to figure out which one he did.
Oh, I don't know what the name of it is. I don't remember the name of it.
There's a bunch of films that he's done that I've never seen. I heard The Young Philadelphians is great. I've never seen that one. So there's always like Harper. I've never seen Harper. I've seen Torn Curtain.
There's 2 Harper films, aren't there?
Are there 2? I didn't know that. I know he did Torn Curtain with Alfred Hitchcock. I've seen his Hitchcock film.
Okay. One of the Harper films, maybe it's only one. I think it's a young Melanie Griffith is in that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Let me see.
I think she's the troubled soul. She's like I think if I'm correct, she's like a Lolita character in that film.
I don't see her listed here.
Then I'm wrong.
But it may be the sequel. Or maybe the second one.
For some reason, I thought there was.
He reprised the role in a movie called The Drowning Pool.
Let's see if she's in that.
Let's take a look.
I want to say she is.
I don't see her listed there either, but that one does have Joanne Woodward in it.
Yeah, Joanne. Okay, then I'm wrong then. I bet she was in one of those films.
Huh. Well, let's get into Verdict a little bit. I realize I derailed us with my joy of Paul Newman.
Not at all. No, it's a perfect way to sway into the Verdict. Yes.
So this film.
How did you see it, first of all? How did this happen?
So I think what it was I was in a Paul Newman transition phase in high school where I was like seeking out stuff that he had been in, because my dad didn't show me a ton of Newman stuff. He showed me, of course, the Stings and the Butch Cassidys and those kinds of things, but not the more intense stuff. And this film just went by, and then later at some point I must have seen The Color of Money, and I thought, this guy continued to be really talented. I want to see some of his other stuff. And I knew he was nominated for this, and I saw it. And I will say my first viewing, I was disappointed in it. Not by his performance, because I feel, and I don't know that I've ever gotten over this reaction, but I'm curious about your reaction to it. I don't feel like the ending is earned. I feel like I don't understand why the jury comes up with the verdict that they do. watching the trial happen the way it happens, it feels a little Deus Ex Machina to me. The ending, it feels a little bit like God coming down and being like, look, everybody has suffered enough in this movie. We need to have a happy ending. Here it is. And that was my reaction as a teenager watching the movie, is
Well,
that
you
the
saw it as a
movie,
teen. You saw the film as a
I
teenager.
saw it as a teenager and I felt like the movie needed, and I expected a tragedy, and I was given
Huh.
an unexpected happy ending that felt undeserved. Like the hero had not earned it. Because and maybe that was the point. And that's the only takeaway I had watching it this time, was that was the purpose, was to see somebody so unworthy of redemption be given, the golden ticket. What were your thoughts on the movie? So obviously, performance wise and cinematography and all these things are wonderful here.
Before I answer that, I think the first film I saw of Paul Newman as a kid was either Cool Hand Luke or Butch Cassidy.
Sure.
So that was how I saw Paul Newman. And I remember Cool Hand Luke made me very sad, but as you know, I like sad things, right? So, but I liked it, but it made me very sad because I liked this character. But
Sure.
like you said, the way he was, he's basically a very self-destructive man, and you wonder, why is he doing this? But he's very sympathetic, and he's got this wonderful presence. He's got these wonderful eyes.
He's so charming, right?
He's very charming, and not in a Prince Charming sort of way, as when you guys were doing Fables way. Not in a
no,
Fable.
it's not a facade.
It's not a facade.
It's definitely genuine joy when you see him laughing and doing the thing with the eggs, and there's a genuine charm to Luke. But I think at the same time, he's not worthy necessarily of our joy and time with him, because he is so desirous of his own destruction.
But I like him, and he's like, I like Butch,
Yeah.
So when we had HBO again in the 80s, when HBO would be free on the weekends every 6 months or so, and I could watch whatever I wanted. The Verdict came on, and this was not the Paul Newman that I knew.
No,
but it didn't change anything. But I already had those two films in my mind.
Okay.
And this was a serious role.
Yes.
And I watched it, and of course I liked it a lot. I just completely taken in by the film. It also helped to have Charlotte Rampling in there, because Charlotte I had seen in the theater in Orca. That was my introduction to Charlotte Rampling.
Your introduction to her was Orca with
Because
Richard Harris?
I saw that movie twice as a kid.
That's the Richard Harris movie, right? That's like a
Richard Harris film.
Yeah.
And with smaller, bold Derek Rowe.
I love these conversations. I would never have predicted this. Okay.
It was my introduction to Charlotte Rampling.
Okay.
And in that film, Orca, I don't think her eyes are blue. I know Paul Newman's eyes are supposed to be blue eyes.
Sure.
But her eyes enchanted me, and I would be dropped off in the theater on Saturdays. My parents would go shopping, and I would go to the movies. I would go to town.
I
if
love
I could
it.
stick into an art film, I would go see it, as you probably might remember. So I saw this movie and I liked it a lot, and Charlotte Rampling. So when I saw this, I didn't know she was in it. I go, hey, I've seen her before. And so, but I was engaged by the film, and also having gone to Catholic school, that also helps a little bit, in the sense that I'm watching this a little bit confused about the church role, and then regarding the ending, though, I didn't have any issues with the ending, and I still don't have any issues. But there's an interesting history to the ending.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
And do you want to hear it now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Basically, Richard Zanuck. What happened is based on a novel, based on some Boston, I don't know if he's a Boston lawyer. Well, it takes place in Boston.
Yes.
And so the book went to Richard Zanuck, and I think Zanuck produced Airplane, another film that you like, film that I saw multiple times in the theater.
Okay.
The second time I saw it because there was breast in that film, and I was wondering, how is this PG and the other films that I want to see rated R? So and I think it's Richard Zanuck who's co-producer of that film.
Yes.
And so Zanuck, they get the book, and they go, "We like this. Let's do a film with this." I don't remember how David Mamet got involved in this. Mamet, my understanding, had not done many films. He had done plays. And I don't know how Zanuck and I think his co-producer Brown gave him the book. In any event, Mamet comes back with a script.
I mean, he had already made several films at this point, it seems.
Which ones were they, John? Does it say?
Or at least done several plays. Let's see. His films were included. Oh, only one film before this was The Postman Always Rings Twice.
He did that?
He wrote, yeah. Postman
I saw that on
Always
HBO
Twice.
too. All these inappropriate films, I should say.
But he had already, his first play was in 1970.
Okay.
And he had many plays prior to this before. He had even already been, apparently when the verdict was in theaters, he was preparing the first stage rendition of Glengarry Glen Ross.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I don't.
So that's how deep down the road he had already been.
I did.
He'd already had American Buffalo and Perversity in Chicago, and yeah.
Because Glengarry Glen Ross came out in what, 92, 93?
The film, yes. The play in 83.
Okay. So they gave him the script. I mean, the book. Okay. He comes back with the script. Zanuck gets the script. First, my understanding, he changed the book substantially. I've never read the book.
Okay.
I don't know who wrote it, but
Barry Reed.
Barry Reed. And so but that wasn't the problem. The problem was Zanuck reads the script and says, "There's no verdict."
Okay. So they didn't even give you the verdict at the end of the movie?
The way it ends, John, is that he gives a summation, a really good summation, right? A really impressive summation. And then Jack Warden himself, they're waiting for the jury. What are they going to do? And they're outside. And Warden says, "I think let's go get something to eat or get something, coffee or something." And they step out, and Warden leaves the courtroom. And Paul Newman, Frank Alvin, I think he pauses at the door and he looks away. He looks towards, I guess, to the interior of the courtroom. And they exit. The end.
Wow.
Zanuck says,
is it kind of like Chinatown, and the only scene in Chinatown is the last 5 minutes?
I did not think of that. It's a very European ending.
Sure. Well, but to call it the verdict and then not give you the verdict, right?
Zanuck calls in Mamet. Mamet shows up and says, "Okay, there's no verdict in it. The book is called The Verdict. The movie's called The Verdict. There's no verdict in here. How are our posters going to look like? Are they going to have the verdict with the question marks on it?" Mamet gets angry at him. He goes, "I'm not going to change anything." But he doesn't explain it. Why? And I'm thinking, John, that the reason Mamet
that's how you get fired, right?
Was the verdict is the reason it's called, what Mamet I think was doing was the audience would be the jury.
Ooh, okay.
That he didn't say that. Neither did Zanuck, but this is my thinking regarding maybe that's what he was doing. Is that, and basically the point of this film is, up until this point, is that it's a story about redemption. That's what Mamet did want about Paul Newman's character, Frank Allen. Yeah. And so at this point, he had made his point about the character, and the jury would decide the verdict. Anyway, I mean, again, this is me. This is not Zanuck. This is not Mamet.
What I like about that story or that concept is the fact that the point of the film is not the guilty or not guilty, right? It's not. It's the way the case has changed Frank, or the way it's changed his perspective on the law. Because here's the thing that irks me about the getting the verdict is we end basically with Frank drunk playing pinball again at the end of the movie. Frank is perceivably has no significant difference from the beginning to the end, which I know is something Paul Newman liked in his movies. He liked having characters that don't go through some significant change and aren't totally different at the end of the movie. His heroes and his characters are often the same at the end. If not, maybe their perspective, they've gone through something, whatever, but they're not wholly new, reinvented versions of themselves, right? And the Frank we get at the end, he's still drinking a beer at 10 o'clock in the morning and playing pinball and smoking a cigarette. And
Are
it's
you sure,
not.
John? Are you sure that's not how it ends? You remember how it ends? Okay. I'm sorry to interject, but what happened here was, I guess before I get answered, what happened, how it ends is that
he lets the phone ring because he's at the office, right?
And he's drinking coffee. And we'll get to that end, how that happened, in the sense that what happened there was Zanuck at this point, they do basically fire Mamet.
Because he's drinking in the morning before he goes in to give his closing argument, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And but that's not how it ends. It ends with the verdict is done. He's congratulated on the way down with Jack Warden by the people there. And then you have,
which I didn't realize that Jack Warden was also the connective tissue for these two movies.
He was. Yes, he is. And then when he goes back to his office, he's drinking coffee. Well, it doesn't say when the transition is, but but I want to discuss eventually. At one point, Charlotte Rampley's character, which I find fascinating in this role,
yes,
kind of like Piper Laurie in a way in The Hustler, is. So what happened was Zanuck says, "Okay, this is not going to work." They go to two different script writers to rewrite the script. Now, at this point, Cary Grant wanted to be in this role. Cary Grant, Frank Sinatra, Hoffman, and Robert Redford, they wanted to be in this film.
Wow.
And Frank Sinatra wanted to do it with basically very little pay. So they had access to the scripts. Not so much David Mamet, but they knew about the film. Ended up happening is Redford gets a copy of the script. Redford wants to do it. Not the David Mamet one, but the rewritten one. Okay, fine. They bring in, I'm not sure if Sidney Lumet is on the film yet. This part I don't remember. But what's happening is there's a problem. Why? Redford wants to change the character. He finds him too unsympathetic. He wants him to drink less, not be a womanizer. He starts being problematic. So he's changing the second script to make him more sympathetic to the viewers. So he begins to annoy the producers. And basically they opt out by Redford. And Lumet's now on board. And Lumet says, okay, no, Lumet was not on board yet. Lumet comes on board. At that point, he goes, I'll do it. And they give him the scripts. But they don't give him David Mamet's script. They don't. But he knows about it. He goes, I want Mamet's script. So fine, they give it to him after he requests it. And then he shocks everyone. He says, I want to do Mamet's script. They're like, it's got no verdict. What are you going to do? He goes, I'll work it out. This is hubris. This is really hubris.
I mean, at this point, he's had quite a prolific career. I mean, you're talking about 15 years worth of, very impressive films.
Network has already come out, right?
Yeah. This film came out in the early 80s. Right? So all of his 70s hits had already occurred.
So he has basically, he can do this. So he's the one that brings Paul Newman on board. So he brings Paul Newman on board. And then when they do the shooting, they still don't have a verdict. So at that point, it's Sidney Lumet's idea to add the verdict, to add the scene with Charlotte Rampling, and the phone ringing.
Yeah.
And he calls in David Mamet to say, look, this is what I want to do. And so according to Lumet, Mamet was cool with it. He said, fine. Yeah, exactly. And I don't know why he was so confident this was going to work with Mamet.
I would have
don't know
loved
how
to have been a fly on the wall during the two of them talking through that.
Yes. And then Lumet had a problem. The problem was with the studios. They said, okay, fine. Paul Newman is in his office. He wins the case. And the phone is ringing. Charlotte Rampling's calling him, right? Laura Fisher. It's her character. Have him pick up the phone. Cinema says, no, we're not going to do that. She's going to pick up the phone.
Oh
That's when Zanuck came in. And Zanuck stood up to the studios and said, no, let's keep it the way it is, where he does not answer the phone. And so, and that's how we got that ending. This is my long story as to how this happened. So there was no verdict originally. They didn't want Mamet's screenplay. Robert Redford got involved, but he made the guy too nice, and they didn't want. And so at that point, it's not going to work. They bring Sidney Lumet in, and Lumet works his magic, and it works, and it makes a beautiful film.
Wow.
And a beautiful film that I like. I like it. That movie's in my top 50. I know when you guys were doing that wonderful thing you guys did, with Gretzky and with Carlito about your top 50 films. This is one of my top 50 films is The Verdict. I don't know where it would rank, but it's up there. But a lot of it has to do with all the things I've talked about. Well, not so much the making of it. Yeah.
Do you feel then that the ending implies for you that Frank's experience on this case has helped him turn a corner?
Yeah, for me it does. It does. It does turn a corner.
And it might just be that my teenage brain couldn't see it. My teenage brain was too Robert Redford-y and wanted him to have a genuine change and could only see him as the guy who was drinking before he went and gave that speech at the end of the movie. Just because he's having a cup of coffee and doesn't answer the phone, it still feels like the same Frank to me. And it might also have been informed by my experiences watching Paul Newman films where he routinely has characters that show very little growth, very little change, right? Are often self-destructive or dealing with patterns of behavior, right? And this felt in keeping with his other characters. What I liked about Color of Money so much is when you paired it with Hustler, you got a bigger character growth because both films combined to give him a bigger journey that he wasn't able to have in either film on its own. But when combined, the version of that character across, Fast Eddie has 2 films of growth, and therefore it's more pronounced.
In The Hustler, he betrays the love that Piper Laurie's character has for him.
Yes.
And that leads her to basically accept sleeping with George C. Scott's character.
Right.
And it leads to her suicide.
It's very Hamlet-esque.
Very Hamlet-esque.
There's a lot of Hamlet going on there.
It's it basically, when he discovers this, in a way he accepts his responsibility. He contributed to this happening. And you see his character at this point change. Where he has that confrontation with George C. Scott when he's going to play basically Minnesota Fats again.
Yeah.
And George C. Scott says, you're going to give me a cut. He goes, I'm going to give you anything. And you can beat the crap out of me. But it's not going to happen. And when I come back, I'm going to kill you. Is basically, because he knows what has happened is they were all contributed to the death of this woman that cared for him. And now we get to The Verdict. We have Charlotte Rampling's character.
Right.
Who is initially, she is betraying Frank. Well, she's not betraying Frank. She's basically a spy for the law firm. But she thinks Frank, remember, he's been portrayed as a man who fixed a jury trial.
Right. Although he didn't, it was just put on him.
Yes, but she didn't know that at first.
No.
that he's a drunk. He's only had a
Yep.
few cases, failed
Which is
marriage,
fair.
self-destructive,
Yep.
and is an ambulance chaser.
Yep.
So she
And a
comes in,
womanizer, to your point, like picking up women in bars and
all those bars. So basically, she says he's just like everyone that I know. When George Mason has that conversation with her, welcome back to our world, when he's giving her that check.
Yep.
But when she meets Frank, and they have that conversation in the bar, when he's talking about why this case is important to him, and he's not talking about this is going to make my career again.
No.
I'm going to make lots of money. And this again, the actors are so good. And Frank knew, and he's looking away, he's looking up, and she's looking at him. She's thinking, this is not the man I thought he was.
Right.
And here I am destroying him. And when he says basically that he's there, basically, he really believes he wants justice for this woman for the sake of it. And there's a subtle part in her reaction he doesn't catch, because the way it's shot with Lumet is he's looking. If you look at it again, is that Paul Newman is looking. He's got a cigarette. He's looking up. So when she reacts, he doesn't catch it and go, "What, did I say something?" And that doesn't happen because her reaction is very subtle, but it's like surprised. This is the man I'm here to destroy, who's actually, in the world that I live in, he's actually a decent man to some degree, right? And then when he finds out that she is a plant, basically, and he confronts her, it's a wonderful scene. She sees him. Now, she wants to tell him what she's doing. But when she sees his face and her reaction, and he comes up to her and he just strikes her.
Yep.
And she falls, and the men are restraining him in the bar, and she says, no, leave him alone. The thing is, he cares about her, and she cares for him, but here, basically, she is in a way has betrayed him.
Yep.
So that final scene that was added at the end, where she is calling him over and over again, and he knows that's her on the phone. He's not picking it up. Fade to black.
So, because I don't think until now I've ever read it as him basically hanging up on his old wife. I certainly viewed it as him hanging up on her, right? And not interested in pursuing that, or if he was even aware that it was her calling. For me, it almost, I get, he's drinking coffee. I didn't view that as like a big change. I just viewed that as him. I don't know. It felt less significant to me in the viewing. It felt more like he was, giving up on, like you're saying, the monetary side of what this case was going to mean, and the business side of the success of it, and maybe it's a newspaper calling, maybe it's a client calling, maybe he's like, I'm just not interested in this whole.
He's no longer a failure, John.
Okay.
Remember when things fall apart?
I viewed him as no longer a lawyer. Honestly, I feel like he got to the end and it was like, I don't even know that I want to be in this profession anymore.
No, I think where I see it is no, I think because lawyers, and you can remember when he says, when he's got that almost like epiphany, when he goes to revisit this client, the vegetative state, and he's taking the Polaroids, and the nurse says, you can't be here. And he's been looking at the Polaroids, and something happens, the expression in Paul's face, and he goes, so you have to leave here. And he's almost like, I'm her attorney, like almost her protector.
Like he's telling himself, not the nurse.
The nurse, but also like almost like a guardian angel in a way. And so he is, but basically also himself. And by the end of the film, we have Paul Newman's character, who is, because he's got that scene, John, where his main star witness, the Dr. Gruber, has been A guy
just
who was very
he
surprised. He goes,
vanishes.
"Why are you doing this? You know, I don't want to
Yep.
work with these other doctors who don't know what they're doing. Basically, they're quacks." What he didn't say that, but basically is. But then he's bought off. We're bought off. He set up some island. He's
Yep.
not there. So now he has to get. This is 1980, 81, right? This is what
Yeah.
people that are watching who have not seen this film is he has another expert witness.
The black man.
And that's the thing is, he happens to be black. And this is 81. Yep. Even as a kid, when I saw that,
yep.
As soon as I saw that, even before Newman's reaction, I think the audience knew that's going to be a problem. Because we know that we knew the world we lived in.
Yeah.
This is an African-American man. We know how the jury, and even it may not even be even to the issues of being racist. We have, again, our prejudices, or basically our ignorance.
Okay.
If you're not around African-American people, Hispanic people, Caucasian people,
they can't be doctors.
They can't, this is going to be a problem. This is just human. It's human. So now he knows we have a problem. We got to find more witnesses, but he can't get any of the witnesses. So
not in the time he's got left. Yeah.
Time he's got left. So he goes back and he sees, and he's with Charlotte Rampling, and she's in his apartment or wherever he lives. And she goes, "We're going to lose." And at this point, he doesn't know that she's basically, working for the other side.
A mole, yeah.
But she's already torn by this. She's already very much torn by this. She wants to find a way to tell him. But when he says the word torn, he goes, "What do you mean?" And she goes, "We can't win, basically." And she says, "That's it? I thought the jury decided, basically, this. Are you giving up?" He goes, "Well, I thought, why are you here? You want sympathy from me? Is that what you want? You want to be like your mom? It says, I have a fever. I can't go to school tomorrow. You're not going to hear that from me, friend." She says, basically, he's got that wonderful line. She goes, I've invested in failure. I'm invested in failure enough. I'm not going to do it again. But she's also talking about herself. Because she knows he's basically a quote unquote whore, which he is not. And she thought that's what he was.
Yes.
And he's not that. And this, for me, that scene is so powerful for me. And again, the dialogue is very sparse. But those two fine actors, this is Paul Newman, Charlotte Rampling. You may not know who she is, but she's so damn good in that role when she looks and then he looks back at her and he goes into the bathroom and she comes in because she knows she's crossed the line. She's gone too far. And she goes, "Just leave me alone. Just leave me." And then it transitions to a scene where she stays in the bed, and Paul Newman is still, he doesn't take off his coat. He's still in his suit. He's got his coat. He's sitting there looking at her. So one, she doesn't leave. Two, he's just looking at her. And maybe the sign, of these two people. She could have left. She didn't. They don't make love. And she's there with him. And in a way, like a sense of confidence for him in some way. And she spoke truth to him. I'm not going to invest in failure anymore. Because he's been a failure in his mind ever since he worked for that prestigious law firm. Remember, he went to private school.
Yeah.
He went to primary and secondary private school, St. Francis. Because I remember reading when Mason had his resume, basically. He went to Boston College. Was second in his class. Editor of the Law Review, which is very prestigious.
Oh man, yeah, his
from your brother.
His resume was incredible when they mentioned it a few different times.
He goes to work for a prestigious law firm, marries, he's up in upper society, and then when his firm is doing what Mason's firm is doing, basically, being unethical,
rigging illegal,
rigging the game. He sees that, and when he confronts the partners about it, they throw him under the bus. They say he did it. He's the one that's doing jury tampering. And all this, she learned from Jack Warden. That's another wonderful thing about the David Mamet script. And that's another thing that appreciates his character. because he never says, well, this happened to me, feel sorry for me, I was thrown
No,
under the bus.
he'd never
He
bring this up.
he never brings it up. She
No.
has to hear it secondhand,
Yep.
and he's the man she's here to destroy. And again, it's a hospital, supposed to do no harm. It's the Catholic Church, supposed to be all good, who control the church. And
It's the justice system. It's supposed to be impartial.
Impartial to the sacred and the profane.
Yeah.
Throughout this. So it's just that's why I think the film over the years, I've watched it numerous times, it just resonates with me so much in that sense. And I do feel for Charlotte's character. I do feel very much those scenes are painful for me to watch when she's calling him, but he's not picking up. But I can see it also from his point of view, why he's not picking up. And then it fades to black. That's the way it ends, and that's fine with me. So in many ways, yeah.
Oh, I will say this has definitely expanded my understanding of the nuance that was going on there, because I think, even disliking some elements of the ending never bothered me to the extent that it ruined the enjoyment of the film, because the truth is the subtlety that's all through the movie is important, and it informs the characters, it informs the plot. It's vital that there is this sort of murky gray around everything, and that nothing is spelled out for us. I will say I probably would have dramatically appreciated the ending to be no verdict given. I think there would be something almost more fitting in my mind about that, but I'll have to ruminate on that a little bit and just kind of
It's
see.
interesting, isn't it?
It really is.
It's fascinating, but that's more like I said, more like a European film ending.
Oh, for sure.
And probably with that, I think that would have pissed off someone. When The Sopranos ended in that controversial ending,
right?
That type of
just
thing.
Just cut to black,
and like what? No. And also, again, this is the title of the film is called The Verdict. And even though you may have people like Mamet and them on the circuit saying, well, the jury is the one that's going to be the one giving it. The audience is going to give the verdict.
Right.
We don't want that.
Yeah.
We don't want that. Are they guilty? They're liable or not? Are they going to be liable or not? So, okay, fine. So anyway.
Oh, man. I don't know that there's a whole bunch more to say on The Verdict. Was there more that you wanted to bring up on this before we, get a little bit maybe into the other Lumet tie-ins that we might want to tie in, or we spent some time on Newman, but not necessarily on Lumet's larger filmography.
No, you indulged me a lot, John. Thank you. I went on more than I thought I was going to go.
I loved it. I learned a bunch, and I that's what I love about these conversations is I think you and I have such an appreciation for so many aspects of storytelling that it's kind of fun to get into the weeds a little bit on, especially honestly with something as rich as the work of Sidney Lumet, a David Mamet, a Paul Newman. I think Charlotte Rampling, you end up with a lot to talk about, a lot of things to discuss.
I guess final thoughts on The Verdict is the idea again of that speech when it's about being a failure. And Newman's character he starts to believe he's a failure, and but by the end of the film, I think for me when I see that is that he realizes he's not, unless he thinks he is, and if he goes on this self-destructive manner of drinking himself to death, right, and maybe self-pity or whatever, and that speech that she told him, I'm not going to invest in failure anymore, is and how he basically took liberties with this case. He didn't accept the initial offering, and that could have been ambition as well on his end, right?
Sure.
It's not just ambition in the end, try to redeem himself at the expense of his client without telling the client, because again, one of the many things I'm sure your brother has told you is that maybe you already knew is when you get an offer for a case, you have to tell your client, and your client has to decline it. He doesn't do that.
No, he declines it for them.
He does it for them without informing anything about them,
Yeah.
and that can get him serious trouble, right?
Oh, for sure.
And but not at all. And so, but yeah. So in any event, that's my thoughts on the film, and it's a movie that I just think about ever since I saw that with Paul Newman. I mean, I always liked them. You know, I mentioned Cool Hand Luke and Butch Cassidy, and then movies that I saw when I was very young, and I saw this one when I was very young, and then over the decades as I returned to it, I always like it. And of course, the cast is wonderful. James Mason, I like James Mason. You know, I know you like him because North by Northwest,
right?
your love for Hitchcock.
Sure.
I think probably the first James Mason film I saw was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Oh yeah, classic.
Maybe so. You know, movie I like. You know, and so
something that stuck with me on the rewatch that really I probably only built this bridge because of watching these two films in quick succession is this feels like the lawyer's perspective from the 12 Angry Men juror coming back with they're not guilty.
I like that, John.
Where you have, you know, as they said in 12 Angry Men, this lawyer is doing a bad job. He's failing up there. He is not succeeding for his client.
Yeah.
But they get in that room, they bring their baggage in, and they start talking through all the details, and they come through with the right decision, despite the system and despite the failings and despite the failures. And so maybe, and this was the point I was kind of building around, was this idea that the injustice of how the realities of a jury should go, creating a justice, plays out from the lawyer's perspective in the verdict, where we don't see the jury room, we don't see the decisions and the conversations and things that happen in there. But yet again, Lumet presents us with a jury that's able to see through the mire and find, I don't want to call it justice, but certainly find truth in some way, right? And so you have a lawyer who's like, I'm a screw up and I failed this case and I failed this client, still getting a shot at redemption, you know?
Absolutely.
I don't know. So there may be this dovetail here to the two movies together.
I think some filmmakers could take lessons from Lumet, is that his films are not preachy. He's careful that they're not didactic. And that's the key of being didactic, is you got to be careful with that. Because then even people like myself, I may agree with your opinions on social issues and politics, but when you start, okay, stop the scene right there. Now, don't go over and don't tell me, okay, this is the part. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Give the audience benefit of the doubt. Can't trust the audience. They're not going to get it. Okay, some of them are not going to get it. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But trust the audience.
That's that. I think I've brought this line up. It stuck with me from 6 Degrees of Separation, where the Donald Sutherland's in his kids' kindergarten classroom looking at the artwork. And there's a Matisse and there's a Picasso, and oh my gosh, how do you create all this amazing artwork with your students? And she says it's just about knowing when to take it away from them.
That's good.
Right. Knowing where to cut it.
That's right.
Knowing where to just stop.
That's right.
Before you've overstayed your welcome and overstated your thesis, I guess the antithesis of it would be the line in Soap Dish, where the director of the soap opera says, "We've got a statement to make here, people. Let's not underline the statement. Let's just make it." It felt very much like they're not trying to make art. They're just trying to make, a product to entertain.
Very good.
So there might be something there to look at as far as perspectives on artwork.
I like that, John. No, those are my thoughts on the verdict.
No, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I did want to at least touch on one other there's so many Lumet films. There's so many great ones. In fact, I don't know of another filmmaker who has a first and final film that are so strong.
Which is his final film, John?
His final film is Before the Devil Knows You're Dead with Ethan Hawke and Philip Seymour Hoffman.
I've not seen that. I've seen that's the one with Albert Finney.
Is he in that one? Let me double check. I don't remember who plays the
I've seen
parents in that.
clips of
Yes, Finney and
Hoffman.
Marissa Tomei.
I've seen clips of that, of him, having this confrontation with his father.
The plot has to do with brothers who are in over their heads financially and decide they're going to rob their own parents, and it goes horribly wrong and violence occurs.
wow.
and then they're like stuck dealing with each other. So Hoffman and Ethan Hawke are wonderful, and Hoffman is very he's very manipulative, and Ethan feels very simple-minded, and he's just trying to, like, not get too underwater in this situation. And it's very visceral film. But again, you look at 12 Angry Men to that. It's a woman screenwriter named Kelly Masterson. I don't see if she did anything else. It doesn't list anything else. Oh, she wrote the movie Snowpiercer. The one that
really?
Chris Evans
very
did.
Different than Snowpiercer. Okay.
Yeah. Killing Kennedy and Good People. She also did. I don't know those movies.
I don't know those.
But it's a good film. But for me, the one I wanted to bring up was Night Falls on Manhattan. It was one of the first times I ever saw a Lumet film in the theater.
Okay.
I don't know that I don't know that I've seen any of his other. It might be the only one I've seen of his in the theater. It was 1996, which is prime John movie going era. Like, this was me. Every Friday, I was pretty much going to see a movie at some point. And the cast is so good. I mean, it's Andy Garcia, Ian Holm, Lena Olin, James Gandolfini. It's really stacked, really wonderful cast. And the only flaw in the movie is they took a book by Robert Daly, and Sidney wrote the script.
Okay.
The main character is Sean Casey, an Irish lawyer, played by Andy Garcia. You're gonna say, like, wait a second, how did they do?
Couldn't do that now.
Ian Holm plays the Irish police cop who's his dad. And the only way they explain it is there's one moment when he asks him to come to Mom's grave site, and Mom is like Maria Lopez Casey. Like, the idea that, like, he's Latino, but from Mom, and he's got an Irish dad who's a cop. But it's a wonderful look at disillusionment with the system. And you have the movie begins with Garcia getting a speech from the head of the district attorney's office, because he's now become an assistant district attorney, and he's going to work in this big city and have to run all these cases and work with drug dealers and all these kinds of things. And he's basically the head of the office is basically trying to disillusion them. Like, look, this job's gonna suck. You're gonna have to work your butt off. You're gonna be working late nights for clients that you can't stand, that are guilty. This job sucks. And it ends with Garcia giving the speech. Now it's a year, 2 years later, and he's giving the speech to the new guys. In between, he talks about, like, you're gonna find a client that is guilty, and you're gonna get them off, and you're gonna be damned, and you're gonna find a client that to be innocent, and they're gonna go down, and you're gonna be damned. Like, he's basically dealing with the fact that this system is flawed, and you're gonna do your best, and it's not gonna necessarily work out every time. And there's some beauty to all of this, and it has to do with the plot is police corruption. His dad almost gets killed in the line of duty.
And Serpico.
Yeah. Very similar discussions. And so dad gets nearly killed in the line of duty, and then Andy Garcia is the young district attorney prosecuting the person who shot dad. And the case makes him a celebrity, and he moves up quickly in the DA's office, only to then later look back at the evidence of the case and question maybe some of the stuff, maybe some of the truths that he had been fed in this king-making case. Dreyfus plays the defense attorney who is representing the black man accused of shooting his dad through the doorway. And Dreyfus is wonderful and has like 3-4 really great scenes. And then Colm Fiore and Ron Liebman kind of like steal it for me. Ron Liebman, who is a great actor who did a lot of plays. He most famously played Rachel's dad on Friends. On the
I never
TV show
watched
Friends.
Friends. Wasn't a Friends fan.
But Ron Liebman is great. He plays the main district attorney who sees something in Garcia and wants to bring him up. But this might come back to haunt him later on. But great performances. James Gandolfini. This is one of the first times I saw him.
You said 96, correct?
96. So pre-Sopranos, Gandolfini. I had seen him in Get Shorty, and I had seen him in this, and they were both very different kind of roles for him. But again, what I liked about it is the subtlety like that we get with Lumet. It's a courtroom drama, a lot of it in and around the courtroom, but it's almost like a little bit of Verdict and a little bit of Serpico, because you get the cops and the police corruption side like blended together. But I highly recommend it. I may have a soft spot for it just for the era when I saw it. But the cast I think holds up strong, and I've rewatched it a few different times. Yeah, really, really strong. And I want to say I don't think it was nominated for anything. But I remember when the reviews came out, everyone was saying Ron Liebman might get a supporting actor nomination because he really does almost steal the movie from all of these bigger names. Ron Liebman he's powerful. He's powerful. And then Lena Olin, just gorgeous and wonderful. And
The Unbearable Lightness of Being. She was Sabina. 1988, 89. That was my introduction. I'd read the novel by Milan Kundera.
Okay.
And the film had come out. And that was my introduction to Daniel Day-Lewis, Julia Binoche, and Lena Olin. It's a Hoffman film. I think it's a film he made after The Right Stuff. And so, she's wonderful.
Yeah.
I didn't know she was in that film. So
she plays Richard Dreyfuss's assistant. So she's working for the defender's office. So, but she's got she thinks Garcia is attractive, and they kind of have a little fling, but like they're on either sides of a lot of cases. And so she's forcing him to question the things he's being fed from the police officers, because he's like, I grew up, my dad's a cop. I grew up with him. Of course, I'm going to trust everything he tells me, and Ian Holm plays his dad, and he's marvelous. He does a really thick Irish accent as his father.
I know you like Ian Holm quite a bit. I know from the films you've talked about in the past.
I feel like, he's obviously had an incredible career. And I'm very partial to Sweet Hereafter as just a gut wrenching film. And he is so wonderfully painful to watch in that. Like it's like, that's going to be, I know everyone will remember him for their own things, the Lord of the Rings or whatever, but it's always going to be Sweet Hereafter.
No, I remember him from that film. It's a very powerful film.
Oh, so I just wanted to throw that one out there. Is there any one of Lumet's films that you wanted to mention that maybe didn't come up tonight?
Well, briefly, you mentioned Serpico. Serpico is with Al Pacino.
Oh yeah,
and that's about police corruption based on real life. Real life person, and he's kind of like in the Fonda's character in 12 Angry Men. But here, his life is actually at risk. When he stands up to basically, do I take bribes or I don't take bribes? Okay, I don't take bribes. But then my fellow officers are going to look at me. Why aren't you taking the bribes? Should we be worried about you? Should we?
Right.
And you should be worried about it. and basically, I want to get him killed.
Yeah.
And so Serpico comes up. But you mentioned Failsafe. For me, I go back to Failsafe. It's a movie I watched multiple times. I suggested it to some friends of mine who teach high school. They were not aware of it. And some of them have actually shown Failsafe in their classes when they discuss the Cold War.
Wow.
And they've told me it resonates with their students because I said, well, suggest to them, what if you were the president and this happened to you?
Sure.
And I think the scenes that resonate with that are the scenes where he asks his friend, who's, I think he's a general. I forget who the actor is. but he says he's going to be the one who's going to fly a plane. Because basically, those that I've seen fail safe is some American bombers do some kind of computer glitch. The men on the plane get orders to bomb the Soviet Union. There's no way to communicate with them. So now the president has said what to do. He's getting pressured from different sides. He does something which is not popular. First, he suggests sending American planes to shoot down their own planes.
Right.
Then he starts again. He gives basically intelligence information to the Soviets about how to shoot down these planes, which is not popular, and again, in the cabinet and among the military. But then he does something which is this is when I saw this, I said, oh my God. Because what's happening is he's in communication with the Soviet premier. And the Soviet premier, basically, he's got people, he wants to believe the president, this is an accident. This is not intentional. This is not some kind of trick to start a war, destroy the Soviet Union. He wants to believe him, so he says. But he tells the president, there are people who are around me who don't believe you. So what's going to happen if your plane gets through and bombs Moscow? Are we going to, do we have to accept that it's an accident? And the president, Fonda, is very much aware about human nature.
Yeah. And
he basically says, would you believe me if it was an accident? And he says, and if things were reversed, right, and you bombed us, would we believe you? Probably not. So now he does something when he says, I want everyone to hear, the Soviet premier, my cabinet members, and the people who are listening. It's not open, it's not out to the public. He says, if in the event one of our bombers gets through and drops the bomb on Moscow, destroying it, then I will order one of our bombers to drop 2 bombs on New York City. I saw that and I heard that. and again, there's silence throughout. And everyone gasps. And to make matters worse, the general he orders is an old friend of his. And his friend, he tells him, we don't know this early on, but we learn later on, is his friend knows what he has to do, but his family lives in New York City. His wife and kids.
Yep.
And when he says this, someone in his cabinet takes out a newspaper and a society page and says, does he know? And they point. The president's wife is in New York City on some kind of, she's there for some reason.
Yeah.
And somebody says, yeah, he knows. I
forgot about that bit.
It's just so, I watch that and I'm riveted. And again, when I talk to teacher friends, that they tell me that what would you do? This is a resort. Would you resort to that?
Yeah, of course.
But of course he does it because in the sense of an eye for an eye. And also to prevent nuclear Armageddon that would destroy this planet. It is not a Soviet, American, Russian, American issue.
No. It's a humanity issue.
Humanity issue. And to have, again, it's Fonda as president. His presence. The fact that we trust Fonda. Like we have Paul Newman in the verdict. We see him in this role.
Yeah.
We trust Paul Newman. We see him so vulnerable in a way we've never seen, almost pathetic in some scenes. This is, this is not the Newman we know. And Kuhad look, we kind of see that, but not like this. So yeah, it's fail safe for me every time.
I would desperately want to see it again at some point. I don't know that I've seen it ever streaming anywhere or anything like that, so I'll have to look for
Yeah,
it
have
at
it
some
on
point.
DVD. If you ever want to see it, you want to have a talk about it, I would love to discuss it with you.
Well, we will definitely do more of these, and I'm sorry that it has taken so long to do a part 2 or a second round of this, because I
No
greatly
worries,
enjoy
John.
these conversations.
Same here. I'm grateful for this. Thank you very much, John. And
Absolutely my pleasure. I just recently got 4 new Blu-ray Criterion.
You got 4 Criterion. I think I saw one of your channels in replay. Don't tell me you got Bull Durham,
Yes.
one of them. Did you get a John Sayles film?
I did not, but I did consider a couple of his.
Why did I think you got a John Sayles film?
I did go off on a John Sayles tangent.
That's great.
And I think I even thought, as I was saying, I was like, I wonder if Gore's a John Sayles fan, because you seem like a guy who would
because of Lone
appreciate
Star.
his work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lone Star was filmed not that far from here.
I was gonna say, because of the Texas connection.
Yeah. What were the other 3 you got? I know that I saw that video.
Rebecca by
That's right.
Hitchcock.
Okay.
Princess Bride.
That's right.
And oh goodness, I've forgotten the other
There
one.
was one you couldn't remember.
Yeah, so there it is.
And you still can't remember it.
Yeah, right. I still can't.
That's what it was, because there was one you couldn't remember, John, from your life.
Well, I'm gonna make a video on it tomorrow and post it. So
Okay.
I'll produce the content to share, and I might even go through some of my other criterions, because they obviously do such marvelous jobs.
Our Barnes and Noble doesn't carry Criterion, but I was looking at them online, but I'm on a budget at this point. There's too much to order, and I said,
I
no.
blame Daymares. He messaged me that he bought some, and then I went online, and then I ended up with 4. So I'll blame him.
Bull Durham's a wonderful film. I like Bull Durham.
I adore it, and I will say my DVD was starting to look really poor on my quality television, and I was ready for an upgrade. So although I haven't gone 4K yet, I'm due to upgrade my player to a 4K player at some point.
I saw that movie multiple times, and I always remember Susan Sarandon's expression. I don't know what Kevin Costner does, but she says in a very sensual way, "Oh my."
he gives his speech on what he likes. Yeah. He's complaining about what he doesn't like, and then she says, well, what do you like? And he gives this monologue listing things, and when he's done, she just replies, oh my.
I still remember Susan Sarandon. Yeah, I like her.
It's marvelous. All right, well, again, folks, Gore's links are down below, although I do need you to remind me, what is the Paradiso movie? What is the second channel that you've got? Remind me.
It's Libro
Paradiso. Okay, so I will add that one to the link down below. I kept going through all the channels I'm subscribed to, and I couldn't find it.
It's okay.
But yes, so that people can follow you. And we will be back again at some point when we get inspired by the next concept that we want to discuss, or the next filmmaker or actor or what have you. Maybe we'll do a whole Paul Newman thing, because I tell you, I'd be happy to do that as well. Much appreciated, everybody, for coming and hanging out with us. And,
thank you.
And joining in the discussion. Please leave your comments and thoughts, and I will catch you all again later.
Good night, everyone.